Got it.
Hello and welcome, Be Awesome at FM listeners. My name is Joshua Peach, and this is episode 3. And we got the summertime co-host Paul Anastasi joining us on this windy, cold, raw, ice rainy Friday up here in New England. Paul, you look toasty and warm. Are you in Florida or someplace? Yeah, Mexico. Where are you?
Yeah, I'm at Key West. It's 90 and sunny, so I don't know what you're talking about. No, actually, I'm at my beach house at Hampton Beach. It's no day to be out at the beach, but it's nice and warm in here where I am and dry. That's the big thing.
Warm and dry. Well, we did our first official episode together last week, and we had Aaron Polanski on that was just going to do an introduction for us, and it turned into him staying the whole time. So this episode, This is kind of our first episode, just you and I, and I'm excited to do this with you today and kind of get into some things that I think are really fitting, because last Friday, the people that were listening heard I was getting my generator ready and we were getting ready to have a storm that actually hadn't existed until about 24 hours prior. It just showed up in the Atlantic Ocean and it dumped where I am. I'm going to say 31 inches because the town next to me, Stoughton, that had the highest measured, like credited was 30.9 inches. So I'm going to give the Peach record of 31 inches. I'm going to round up a tenth of an inch and say that we got the we got the most snow, but roughly 31 inches of snow, soft, fluffy stuff, yet still needed to be cleared. And then now today, 1 week later, and we're sitting in Ice Mageddon.
Anything but soft and fluffy, that's for sure.
Right. And so, what I think would be fitting for us to talk about is that, what is a day in the life of a director of facilities, a custodial supervisor, someone in maintenance, what's their day in their life of, and then kind of dig into more stuff about, tying in the importance of having the right people on your team, not just internally and externally, but, kind of get people to start to understand, what it's like that you guys go through. Cause this is kind of unique. Your role and your position in facilities, especially in education, it changes every day, right? It's wildly uncomfortable. But in true form fashion, what we promise to do is recognize and acknowledge a feel-good story. I can relate to this story, but it's a feel-good story, and it's a story that I actually read about, and I went and I gave the entire facility department in 2014, New Year's Eve 2014, Chinese food celebration for what this gentleman did. His name is Mike Scanlon, and in 2014. He was in the cafeteria at the Wilmington Public Schools at the North Intermediate Elementary School when a fourth grader began choking on some carrots and stopped breathing.
Something near and dear to you.
100% near and dear to me. And this was 3 full years before something like this happened to me. And after the fact, I can really appreciate it even more. But the young boy was ash gray in color, and Mr. Scanlon knew something was wrong. He provided the Heimlich maneuver 4 times before the boy regained consciousness. You only had to do it twice, so I'm pretty impressed with that, especially with he had carrots and I had a side of prime rib with me. But what was amazing was that Mr. Scanlon went and did this, didn't even think twice. I talked to folks there, and it was completely reactionary. He jumped right into action, performed the Heimlich maneuver, and undoubtedly saved this young boy's life. And when I got to meet him, he was a very soft-spoken, felt like, it was one of those story time things where I talked to him and I said, "Do you realize you saved someone's life?" I can remember it. I was in the shop there. Actually, Mary DeLi was there, who you also know.
Yep.
And I said, "Do you realize the importance of what you've done?" And he says, "I just was doing my job and I was just in the right place at the right time," and very simple, mild mannered, not like I'm a superhero. And he'd jump into action doing it all over again, given the need and the opportunity. So I was really impressed by that. And that's a story that I wanted to share, even though it's 8 years old. I still remember the Mike Scanlon story and the little boy. Now think about this, that young man now, 4th grade, he's graduating this year. He graduated last year. I mean, it's hard to think about. but he's given the opportunity to graduate from high school and move on to bigger and better things. So that's the feel good story of the day of Mr. Scanlon and Wilmington Public Schools. Thank you for what you do, not just that day, but every day. And now let's dig into some facility management stuff.
Well, that was managing the facility at the time, what he did.
Yeah, oh yeah,
Now,
100%.
like you said, there's no plan. Yeah, you can schedule your morning routines and afternoon routines and maybe when you're gonna have lunch, but every day is different. Every day, you never know what's gonna happen when that phone rings. I always said, no one calls my phone to say, hi, how's your mother? They call because their toilets broke, backed up, the roof is leaking, the wind's blowing through their window, and they're cold in their classroom. It's never hi, how are you?
Yeah.
You know, there's only a few people that do that, and I will say, and not just because you're sitting here in front of me, that you were one of the people that would do that and say, hi, how are you? But there's not many when that phone rings.
I didn't have anything to sell you.
Yeah,
I mean,
you bought it all before.
Yeah, you bought it all before.
each other.
You bought it all before I even started. I mean, you were a client at the company that I was at 2 years prior to me even joining, and you guys bought everything that was there. So the only thing I had left to sell was a smile and to see how things were going. And you know, I've always had just you helped me so much early on with so many different ways that I did. I just want to call and see how you were doing, and we've become great friends, I think, from a part of that. That you just poked a question in my head. Do you remember your first day on the job?
My first day on the job, I had never done facilities before. I had, like we talked about earlier, I had construction background. My first day on the job was the day before the first day of school. And I was in Watertown. And the Watertown had in-house busing. We had 3 of our own full-size buses and 2 half buses. And the day before school opened was when they were inspected by the state police would do the inspection on the school buses.
Yeah.
And I remember it distinctly because I got to the office. They told me where my office was. I got to my office and they said, oh, you need to go down to the town DPW yard where the buses are because they have an inspection this morning so that we can use the buses for school tomorrow. And the state trooper failed 3 out of 5 buses.
Oh, wow.
The day before school. Rejection sticker on 3 out of 5 buses.
Yeah.
So that's how my career started. Never mind just that day. And I had no idea what I was getting into. I said, I can't believe it. Come to find out, the history behind it was there was a mechanic there that no longer worked there when I got there, but he had got a bus rejected in the past, and he took the sticker that the state trooper scratched off the windshield, and he put it back together and glued it back on the windshield and drove the bus. So the trooper found out because he was sitting on duty somewhere nearby and saw the bus go by him and, you know, stopped it and went into the bus. And there was a sticker with all the tear marks in it that he had like scotch taped back to the windshield. So they come in full force. There was no breaks they were given that day. And they put rejection stickers on it, which we could drive with the rejection sticker. We just had, you know, 5 business days to make the fixes. And
an acknowledgement of failures that need to be fixed. So in a different world, I had a spring water delivery business. And the one thing we never wanted to see when we were on the highway was the truck weigh station open, because you knew DOT and state police, and they don't mess around. And you don't blame them, because it's, you know, with me, it was, you know, tens of thousands of pounds that if it wasn't properly working, that it was a problem. And a school bus, hey, if it's not properly working, you don't want the brakes to go. And I think a lot of buses have air brakes, don't they?
Yeah.
You don't want to mess with that stuff.
And I don't know if you've seen an inspection by a state trooper when they show up at a place like that, but they have these one-piece jumpsuits that they put over the uniform.
Yeah.
With the cutout in the side so that their 9mm Glock can come through the side of so that's all you see is that one piece coverall and the gun.
Yeah.
It says state police on the back.
Yeah.
Very impressive, very impressive. And this guy was the trooper that came. He was 6'4", 6'5".
Yeah.
Actually, his name was Trooper Hanna, and he was related to the New England Patriots. John Hanna, was that the
Yes.
New England
Yep.
Patriot? Yeah, it was his brother.
Yep.
So very large man, very obvious to pick out in the crowd.
Yeah. Well, with my ADD, and I've seen those jumpsuits on more than one occasion. And the only thing I've ever been caught for was a license plate light that was out of order. And the reality was we never drove the trucks at night. We drove them first thing in the morning to the end of the afternoon. But back then you couldn't deliver, after I think 5 or 6 p.m. Now with the rules, I get deliveries from Amazon at like 9 and 10 p.m. But,
Right.
I was very fortunate. My dad was a Vietnam helicopter pilot in the 101st. And so he was super anal of doing your checks every day, doing all the checks and balances, checking the tires, checking the signals, checking the headlights, all that stuff. And the one thing I never paid any attention to was the license plate light. It could have been out for a day or 4 years for all I know, but it was the one thing that I just said, what is that? But I never needed it. And that was the one thing I got caught for. But yeah, that's very intimidating. They're very intimidating.
So that was my first day on the job as a facilities manager.
So your first day on the job as a facility director, and you're dealing with transportation things.
Yes, I was. My title was director of facilities and transportation.
Yeah.
So we took care. Our department took care of the buses. We mapped out the bus routes.
Yep.
We did all of that. I can't tell you how many times I've walked from someone's house with a measuring stick to see if they were over 1.5 miles from the school, because after that they have to pay.
So in your journeys, that brings it. I mean, I love this kind of improv piece of coming up with the questions and things and learning, because I don't think I knew that. In your journeys over the years, what have you seen? We always say this, and I always say this, but I really don't know. Facility directors wear multiple hats. And I know a district that the director of facilities is also the transportation director and also is the food service director. Have you ever seen other hats worn that are outside the general facility director role?
I have seen business directors that are also facilities directors. So that the facilities director is the business director is the facilities director. The most unique double career that I saw was actually a custodian. I did an assessment on a school up here in New Hampshire, as a matter of fact, Southampton. And the custodian worked at the school in the morning for 3 hours and then came back in the afternoon for 4 hours. And in the middle, he was a goat farmer.
Wow.
And that wasn't part of his official duties at the town, but he ran a goat farm when he wasn't sweeping up the floors and cleaning up and emptying trash in the afternoon.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of a unique background to have and go into custodial work.
I'd like to meet him. I got a couple goats. We could talk shop.
Yeah. He'd come to work with the barn boots on and everything. He'd come to the building with the barn boots on, and he was quite a character.
Just get the job done.
Yep.
Yeah. So you kind of talked about the, nobody calls you to see how your mom's doing. You never get those calls, which is, and I always give the tagline of your stakeholders. And this is what something that a lot of people don't always understand is when I say, who is your customer? And people start giving me a list, and I say, your customer is everyone. It's the taxpayer, it's the community, it's the businesses, it's the students, it's the teachers, it's your faculty that works everywhere other than in your office. Everyone is your customer. And sadly, in today's day and age, and I don't know that it's been like this forever, but definitely for the last, at least since social media really started to come into play, they expect the best and report the worst. Right. And that's just the way that it is. And I think that we're so accustomed to getting the worst that we're the quickest to raise our hand to try to complain about it. And we're the last to kind of raise up and say, wow, I should be thanking Paul or his team or what have you. But I'm sure that happens, right? I mean, you do get people that say thank you and appreciate whatever little things you do.
Absolutely. And we don't do it for the thank yous, but it's really nice when they do come.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're the guys, we're like the Wizard of Oz. We're
Yeah.
the guy behind the curtain,
Yeah.
pushing all the buttons and moving all the levers and making all the lights come on.
Yeah.
I remember the story I always tell is when we opened Newton North. For people outside of Massachusetts, they might not realize that when we opened Newton North, it was the most expensive new high school in the state of Massachusetts. It was $200 million, and that was 11 years ago. It was outrageous, and it was all over the news because we were spending the state's money like drunken sailors. And so the day that we came to open, it brought a lot of press.
Mm-hmm.
And I myself was at the building at 4 a.m. with the principal, and her and I walked the building from end to end, and we both had a broomstick with the tennis ball stuck on the end.
Yeah.
And you use that to take scuff marks off the floor. So you don't have to keep bending down to
Oh, wow. Yeah.
You use the tennis ball on the end of the broomstick. So her and I had a broomstick and a tennis ball, and we walked the building just to make sure there was nothing out of place, because the press, the cameras were outside, the vans were pulling up, and they had a press conference for 7 a.m. where they were going to cut the ribbon, and they had bleachers set up at the front door. And it came time where she said to me, it was like 6:45. She said, okay, I need to go to my office now and change and get into clothes, you know, for the ribbon cutting. And I said, and I need to go back to my office because my job's done. And she looked at me with this petrified look. And it's like, you got it. This is what you do.
Mm-hmm.
But at that point, everything the facilities department could do was done. And we stepped back. I had trusted guys that I knew were there by the stage in case the flag blew over or, you know, some little thing happened. But at that point, my job is done and I need to go. I had 23 other buildings that I had to attend to in that city.
Yeah.
So, you know, a lot of times when the lights come on and the cameras are rolling, we're nowhere to be found. We've done our job and we're moving on to something else.
Yeah. I just learned scuff marks with tennis balls. I knew tennis balls you could put on the bottom of desks when you move them around in the summertime.
Yeah.
And elderly put them on the bottom of their walkers to make the feet glide easier. But now to remove scuff marks, I think we need to call our old buddy Dan to check and see if he's got any fixes for that, because
they do. Here's a caveat to that. Now the lime green tennis balls that everyone knows, the outside, the furry stuff on the outside is made with formaldehyde, and when you cut the ball open, the inside has latex powder. So those are two things we can't use in a school anymore.
Oh, wow.
So they did the Dan DeCheckers of the world and those people that sell the widgets have created a tennis ball for the desks that
with no formaldehyde and no
formaldehyde or latex. But the typical tennis ball has powdered latex inside and formaldehyde on the fur on the outside. So
that school, if I remember correctly, was about 400,000 square feet, and I think you have like 157 cameras, right, or something like that.
Yeah, 410,000 square feet. When I left, we were closing in on 200 cameras because we kept finding blind spots.
Yeah.
We didn't have enough people to watch all those cameras. I mean, nobody watched it live time. The camera thing was, you know, you go back after and see what happened.
Didn't you have an on-site scissor lift there?
Yep. Oh yeah.
For light changes and filter changes and a rock climbing wall. I mean, when we talk about it, I mean, we make jokes about the Taj Minuten and the cost involved in it. But I did the tour a couple of years after it was open, and it's an impressive building.
Yeah, we had two full gyms. We had a competition gym for basketball, and then we had an SOA gym, and that stood for simulated outdoor activity.
Yeah.
That had a vinyl, the rubber floors, and actually netting that could come down on the side. You could play a full infield inside the gym.
Wow.
They threw javelins in the gym. They threw shot puts. Anything you could do outside, you could do inside with the restriction of distance. That's all there was. So yeah, it's quite a structure. We're very proud of the building when we did open it, even though we got a whole bunch of grief from people.
So let's think about this one, because I want to hear this, because you just threw out something I never heard of in that type of gym. When you started in Watertown, the school buildings, probably some of them had some age, some of them might have been newer. And we're talking 30 years ago or somewhere thereabouts. How many different materials or how many different types of floor, or how many different room types did you really have? Probably just a handful, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you had the gymnasium floor, you had probably not a linoleum, but what is it?
vinyl tile,
The vinyl tiles.
and then carpeted offices.
Yeah. And I mean, in that Newton North High School, how many different, and they all have to be cleaned and handled differently, right?
Right. Each different material has to be done different. And a lot of the newer materials that we're getting into now are no wax floors.
Mhm.
So sometimes those people that want to sell you something will tell you it's maintenance free.
Mhm.
And after 2 years, when it kind of gets scuffed up, they say, oh, no, you need to seal it and you need to
Mhm.
buff it up once a year. So it's not
Yep.
maintenance free. It is a lot of them are great products, but I had vinyl floors. I had a marmoleum floor with an M, not
Mhm.
linoleum. Marmoleum is made with wood. It's compressed wood products with woods and oils.
Mhm.
And then, we had the polished concrete. We had granite floors. There was the rubber surface on one gym, the hardwood on another gym. You need different tools, different chemicals, different training for each one of those floors. It's the industry has come so far with building products that
Mhm.
from when I started in '93 to when I left in 2018, I wish I had kept track of all the different changes in building construction, but it's and in Newton I had a 1920 elementary school, and I had a brand new 2020 elementary school that was opening when I left. So
Mhm.
we had from one end of the spectrum to the other.
Yeah. My grandfather, I think I've shared the story with you a number of times, so you probably heard it more times than anyone. My grandfather was a custodian in the 70s to the 90s, and retired just a short time before he passed away. And back then, custodian carried, they had their push broom, they had their mop with just soap and water in it, and then they had a spray bottle on their pocket. And if it couldn't get cleaned and supposedly, disinfected, sanitized, sterilized, whatever the word you want to call it, with what they had on hand, then it couldn't be cleaned or sterilized or sanitized. And now you listen to this stuff and it's like, you got to make sure that you're using the right product just so you don't damage the floor or the material. And then you also need to make sure that it actually does its job. Things like if it's porous, non-porous, if it needs wax or not wax. And, a lot of times folks that are in the industry for a while might not even realize that, might try to strip wax off a floor that doesn't have wax on it,
Right.
or try to put wax on a floor that doesn't need it.
Exactly. And I had that happen in the cafeteria at Newton South when it first went down. Before I could get there to do a training, and that the custodial staff, being good soldiers, knew that they had a new floor and they had to take care of it. They took care of it like they did the old floor, and they waxed a no wax floor. So it's not the worst thing in the world, but you need to wax that floor for the rest of its life now.
Right.
Because if you put a stripper on it to take the wax off, it eats the flooring, because the flooring is a softer product now.
Yeah.
It's not a hard vinyl tile or a hard asbestos tile, which we had a lot of too.
I find that the facilities and custodial services professionals in schools are wildly underserved in regards to professional development. Is that a fair and accurate statement?
Yes, absolutely. We here in Massachusetts at the MFAA, we've started training programs for custodians. We've always tried to do professional development for our facilities directors, but we've brought it to the custodial staff, and it's amazing the turnout. Ken Wirtz, I'm sure at some point we'll have Ken Wirtz on the show here, and he can read off the numbers of custodians that we've served and communities that we've trained, and there's just such a need for professional development in the custodial world that just hasn't been there for so long. And those things that you talked about, the mop, the spray bottle, the spaghetti mop, we call it, that mop is no longer used because it held germs and dirt. And whatever was in that spray bottle is probably not used in schools anymore.
Right.
Because
it's probably Windex.
it was caustic. Yeah, it probably Windex with the ammonia.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which we know that we can't mix the chemicals, and so now everybody's gone to green cleaning, and the mops are microfiber, and the chemicals are all green chemicals. So those things that those guys had on their side back then. I had people in guys in Newton that we had a product called Dusterol, and it was petroleum-based product that you'd spray on the old woolly mops to dust the floors, and it was like a magnet. You just move those mops across the floor and the dust would go, but it smelled like you spilled fuel oil in the building.
Yeah.
Because it was all petroleum based, and we can't use that anymore. But we had guys that had squirreled it away, and I tried my hardest to find it. And I don't know where they had it, but I walk in the building, I could smell it. The floors look great. You take a
smell and you say, I know what you guys are using.
I know you got it here somewhere. The floors look great, and it smells like an oil factory here.
Yeah.
But I touched a bit on the flooring, and I talked about those people that try and sell you or tell you that things are what they're not. And I think going back between you and I always found there was a lot of respect between us, even before we became friends, when it was client vendor relationship. And the things that you did, and not to toot your horn, but I will, the things that you did that I found was respect, and it was a learned the schedule. You not only respected me as a person, but you respected my job and the schedule that I had to keep. And you knew not to call me at 6:30 or 7 in the morning.
Yeah,
because that's the craziest time of the day for a facilities director, especially on days like this.
Well, it's a time when nobody should be bothering you, and that's a time that you guys go in to get work done, knowing that the phone's not going to ring or anything.
Right, and then at the end of the day, it's like at 3 o'clock, 3:15. It's amazing how many people put up with something wrong in the building until 3:15.
Yeah.
And then before they're going to leave in their shift, they decide to call the facilities director and say, "Oh, by the way, this is broke. I thought it would fix itself, or I thought I could fix it, or and now it's you're trying to get out the door, and you got to deal with something that's broke." So the beginning and the end of the day are the craziest times of the day. Somewhere in the middle can usually level out, but you learned that schedule, and you had respect for that schedule, and you have respect for what I did as a professional, and you knew not to call at those times. And I think that's huge. There are so, and I can't speak for 100% of the facilities directors in the country or the world, but I think I can speak for 99.9% of them that say we can't take a cold call. Don't show up at my door and expect to come in the office and sit down. And I always said I'll give any vendor a shot. I'll talk to anybody, but don't just show up at my office. Our days aren't built that way.
Well, that was, that kind of goes with you. Your days aren't built until you get there in many cases. So,
right.
And your industry is one of the few remaining. And I think I don't want to say that it's, a lot of older school sales, but there's a lot of road warriors for salespeople and different parts of what you deal with. I mean, let's talk about, and this is one of the things that I learned, and I appreciate the compliment and kind words. The big thing for me that I always tried to pride myself on is I wanted to learn about what you did as much or more than I wanted to show you what I did. See, I figured if I knew what we do and I knew what you do and I knew that they matched up, at some point they'd have a synergy together, right? Yep. It's not, hey, let me show you what we do. It's, hey, let me learn about what you do. Like, kind of like with this podcast, let me learn what a day in your life is like. And then let me see if I can make a difference in it. Not, I have this widget and I want to sell it to you. And I was going to swear, and I don't know. I want to swear on this podcast. Yeah. We get two good check marks with 7 positive reviews and ratings. No swear words yet, but they're coming. But I want to sell you this widget. I don't care if you need it or not. I want to sell you this widget. I want to provide you with a solution to a problem that you have. And the only way I know that is by understanding what your day looks like. And one of the things that I try to do is free up time in your day, find that time in your day. But the way that I always would talk to people when I worked there in a place that dealt with, schools, I would say, hey, we're not just in competition with, and I'll use Alpha Facility Solutions, which I'm with now as their evangelist. We're not just dealing with A&E firms and facility condition assessment companies and equipment gathering companies in our market. We're up against chemical cleaning supply, plastic, bag liner and paper goods people. We're up against HVAC filtration providers for PM. We're up against the mechanical people for that. We're up against outsourced service providers that want to come in on all different aspects, and a whole myriad of other folks.
There's only so much budget, right?
Right.
There's only so much budget that we have to work for, and we have to decide where it goes.
And a lot of times it's the fire that's in front of you.
Right.
That's, I mean, and we're gonna hopefully get 100% of the facility directors in education here over the course of time, because I think this is going to go a long while. And one of the worst, one of the biggest challenges that you guys have is like when something happens catastrophic or bad and it's in the news, everybody's going to call you that's in that space. So if you have a school fire, every company that can fix that building is going to call you over the course of the next 24, 48, 72 hours until someone puts a stake in the ground and says, we're doing the work. I don't know that I ever asked you this, and just out of pure curiosity, on any given day, and I want you to, in the next couple of weeks, as you're doing some of your support to the schools and the Commonwealth, how many calls or emails do you think you get on any given day, or when you were in, one of your full-time roles, from companies that you've never talked to that want your business, or that just keep calling?
Oh, right now I got it. And here, once again, I'm going to toot your horn. I got to tell you, one of the best things you ever taught me was the unsubscribe. You talked about that in one of your talks. And until then, everything just kept coming, and it just multiplies and it swells and it grows. And if you take that few seconds to go down and hit unsubscribe, I mean, right now I'm getting about 6 a day.
Yeah.
And I'm not working, I am working in the industry, but not, under a title of a public school or anything. So that's hard for people to get my connection that way. But I'm getting 5 or 6 a day. And it's you can't get through them all. If you had to read everything that came in.
Yep.
I would always tell people, put something in the title so that I know it's you. And some of them come through with different names. And if someone has an email address that doesn't have their name in it, I don't know who they are. And then the phone calls. How many times does your phone ring and it's spam?
Yeah.
Or it's, Amazon who says that your delivery is not coming because your credit card went dead. Your Social Security is calling because you have a problem with your account. And it's every day that you want to cruise.
Yeah,
I could go on 100 cruises if I.
Oh yeah. Well, as a salesperson, I have always tried to help you guys in managing and navigate that, because my goal, which I was very successful with, is I made many of you become prospects, become clients very quickly. So I wanted to have the hotline or the bat line. So the one suggestion I've always given that I think is genius, and it's not because I came up with it, because there's 7 billion people in the world, and I'm sure someone else thought of it, I just haven't seen it enough places, is a separate email for the district that goes solely for new business opportunity. And I got this when Amy was pregnant with Chance, and we were in the doctor's office for the ultrasound, and I'm sitting there and my phone's ringing and doing all this stuff, and I'm trying not to pay attention to it. And I'm looking, I look up and I see this pharmaceutical salesperson, or this healthcare salesperson walk in, and they literally walked in and they looked at this plaque on the wall, and it said, "We take sales calls on Wednesdays and Thursdays from 2 to 4 p.m. and call this number." And that's it. That's it. Like, that's your window of opportunity. We're telling you when you have it. It's up to you to take advantage of it or not take advantage of it. And so I built off of that there should be an email address that when you get a phone call from a sales person, because I don't think you should blow off opportunities. I think that there's a way to do it in which it makes sense. The facility director needs to do it, and they need to be committed to it, which is, I call you and say, hey, Paul, do you have a minute? I don't have a minute, but if you can send an email to vendor@paul.org, I'll tell you what, I promise to look at your email. I promise to review what it is that you're interested in. And I also take calls on these days for new vendor opportunities. And you do 1 hour block offs. And what you do is that 3 to 5 minute phone call of the fear of saying no and trying to get someone off the phone without hanging up on them. And sometimes hanging up on them is the best thing. But you now have given them the responsibilities on their side.
Yep.
Right. And I think that's something that more people should do, which is, people, and I did it in my career. They'll call and call and call and call until they make you so mad because they just call and call and call and call. They try to beat you to the table, and people are afraid to say no because then they try to sell even harder.
But if I see that someone's respecting those hours and the call times, then I'm gonna take the time to listen.
And you put that on your voicemail. I mean, you can never. So here's the funny thing, and I've talked to a number of people in the industry and sales that sell to schools, and we're on February 4th, and I talked to someone on January. I got to pull the date up so that I have it accurate, because it was really interesting. So really, the first day of working to call was the 3rd. It was the 19th because it was 13 days. In 13 days of calls, they had 10 contacts. So if you take 13 and the average call being 50 calls a day, that's 650 dials that someone probably made on average. Some do more, some do less, and they had 10 points of contact. So you're more likely to get a voicemail than not.
Yeah.
But so if you put on your voicemail, hey, this is Paul, leave me a message if you're calling to sell something or you want to set something up. Here's when you can call and I'll answer my phone, and this is the number. And then you just sit by the phone for that hour and you answer the phone as best you can. And that's, you'll never get through all of them, but you'll get through a good number of them. And then that qualifies and moves forward, moves the bar forward a lot quicker. So I don't know if that's a good idea or not, but I think that it just, the amount of time that you need to spend, because we haven't even talked about, this is going to be a whole different conversation, is, budget preparation, budget management, financial management, what are we going to call it? Staffing. I mean, what's the staffing percentage of what's your absenteeism percentage on any given day?
10%.
So if you have a team of 100, you have a likelihood of having 10 out on any given day.
I proved that. I had exactly 100 people in Newton, 100 custodians and maintenance. And and that's not just calling out. That was approved vacation
personal time,
personal days, sick days that we knew we were going to have. So we were averaging 10, and that's the industry standard is 10%. We were 10 a day. We were short 10 a day, and I had 5 floaters, 5 people that could fill in. So there was always someone trying to catch up.
But you also needed more than 100 to get the job done on any given day, probably.
That's for sure. Everyone's cut back. We know that.
Yeah.
And back to the vendor salesman story. One of my first times early on in my career, I met this I called him little old man. He's probably my age now. He was probably my age now. And he came in, he had this long trench coat and kind of ho hum, and worked his way into my office. My office was in a shop, and I had no administrative assistant at that location. And he started talking to me about chemicals, selling me chemicals. And as he talked, he reached in his jacket pocket and he pulled out a clock radio and he put it on my desk. And this was back, I'm talking in the 90s, back when a lot of this happened. And I said, no, thank you. I said, I'm not interested. And so he left it there, and he reached in and he took out a wallet that had the emblem of his company on it. I said, I'm really not interested. He said, but this could get better. He says, clock radio. He said, if you place an order with me today, we can get to something that's higher up. It was like a pyramid scheme. So I promptly took his items, handed them back to him, sent him on his way. And I was really new. So what I did when I first started is I walked around. I had the keys to the kingdom, right? And every time I saw a door that I didn't know where it went, I would unlock the door and open it. And just
Yeah.
to see what was on the other side of the door. That's how
Yeah.
I had to learn the buildings, learn the facilities. Well, I found in the course of the next 2 weeks after he had left, I found 3 55-gallon drums of car wash
Car wash.
behind us, car wash soap. Now, how much soap do you use when you wash your car? A teaspoon.
It's a capful is what they.
Capful, right.
Yeah.
I had 3 full 55-gallon drums in
Yeah.
closet, and they only had 2 vehicles in the department. You know, it was so it just what was going on there, you know, before I got there. It was crazy, but that's how he worked, and that's how they worked back then. And it was just it was insulting to me that, you know, that's
a lot of clock radios that person probably got.
A lot of clock radios. I mean, 55-gallon drums of car wash. He was probably up to a bass boat or something. I don't know.
That's wild. I never heard that one.
Yeah, we could never use. I don't know whatever happened to it. I left it all behind, but you could never use that much car wash in your lifetime. You know, if you had a fleet of limos, I don't think you could use them.
Yeah, I'm gonna write down. We need to do a consumable inventory management, because the more space you have, the more places you have to hide stuff.
Yeah.
You know, but no, I think this was a good catch up and a good kind of foundation. But, you know, I got one question that's just been pinging in my brain. And every time I want to ask it, we come up with some other thing, which is, you know, I talked about your first day on the job. And do you remember why your first day on the job was your first day on the job? And was that why you decided to become a facility director on your first day, the same reason on your last day? Does that question make sense?
Yeah.
Do you know why you said we don't do it for the money or the thank yous? Right. So why did you get into it? And did that why stay with you through your career? Did it change? And what's your why today? Because you can be retired.
Yeah, I am retired.
Well, yeah, kind of.
Yeah. Working for 4 different communities, but I still have a retired status.
Yeah. But I mean, you're still and I say that loosely. You are retired, but you are very, very supportive and still providing your wealth of knowledge, and you're still doing mentorships, and you're still doing all this stuff to help people in the Commonwealth. And a lot of it you're doing for nothing. Like, you're taking phone calls, you're speaking for free, you're going to other places and other associations and sharing, you know, your professional insight on things. And so you don't need to do that, but you choose to do that. And so there's got to be something internally that's pretty powerful. And I think there's a lot of people that are getting into the profession today. They don't really understand why they're getting into it. Maybe they do, but I think as they go along, and I think that there's a point that they hit, that they go, oh, wow, this is a really cool place to be. And I can make a difference here. So I just kind of want to get your thoughts on where your head was at, and maybe where it's at now, and the difference of that.
I don't think that anyone after 30 years is into it for the same reason of day one. Maybe it is, maybe not. I mean, day one, I needed a job.
Yeah.
With a job I could do, I knew I could do it. Someone told me that not to do it and don't do it. I think I told you that in the last episode. And that just fuels me to prove them wrong. And it was, you know, a town-based job. It had benefits with it. There was paid vacation. It was a lot easier than climbing up on roofs and carrying shingles up 2 stories and working in the weather and you know, working out in this to you know, to put siding on the side of a house or windows in a house and things like that. But then once you get into it, and I know I touched on this in the last episode, that Ken Wirtz would always say, we're here for the kids, we're here for the kids, we're here for the kids. And after a while, you realize that that's really what it is. You're there for the community, you're there for the kids. It's the best thing in the world to see a kid that, you know, you knew as a preschooler or a kindergartner graduate in high school, as much as they might have been a pain in the neck through middle school. That's the worst phase. for the kids and doing destruction in the schools. But, it was, I guess, back before the days of TikTok. So I still had
the bathroom destructions.
a different view on that. But now, I mean, when I left because it was time for me to retire and leave Newton. I quickly knew, I knew at the time that there's just so much need out there for facilities people. We here in Massachusetts, I don't know what other states in the country are like, but we just don't have a feeder program. We don't have people, young people coming into this field. And there's just, I turn away at least 2 jobs every month from communities calling me, they need help. And then COVID just threw everything off the rails. People that were close to retirement, just so they retired, so they just didn't have to deal with the craziness of COVID in the schools. And then everyone needed help. I mean, I can't tell you the panic calls that I got. We need help. We got to clean. We got to disinfect. We got to, space out our chairs. We got to move things around. So yeah, naturally, now it's a much different view than day one. Now that there's, I want to help. I'm in the position where I can help. I don't have to, but I'm doing it because I want to. I volunteer in my hometown of Watertown on the school building committee. And that's, there's a need there too. That's a volunteer job. I can't tell you how many hours I put in on the phone or in a job trailer or things that I've done in my paid career that I'm doing as a volunteer now in my hometown. And when the town manager brought me in for my interview for the building committee, he said, why do you want to do this now? He says, you're retired. And I said, it's time to pay back. I lived in Watertown all my life. I worked there for 10 years. My dad was the wire inspector. My brother works in the water department. My son's a captain in the fire department. My daughter's a teacher. My wife is a principal. Now I can give back.
Right.
I'm not asking for anything, but time to do it and to help. And we're building 2 brand new schools ground up, 3rd elementary school total renovation. And we're in the process of the school building authority for high school, a brand new high school ground up.
Wow.
We're building net zero buildings where it's very exciting. It's a very exciting time for schools in Watertown, that's for sure.
Well, I keep saying the last question, and I got another question, but no, you're why do you want to be on it? It's because you can, and I think that there's a lot of people. I think there's a number of people, and I talked to some, that they're volunteering for everything while they have a full-time job, and you can't do that. And I'm definitely, I'm guilty of, having a hard time saying no. I've just started to say no to, boards and committees, but I spent big part of my career, and I don't regret one bit of it. I think a lot of my learning and a lot of my success comes from digging in, rolling my sleeves up and having a full-time job and working nights and weekends on some of these committees and boards and things. But I think it's important for people that do, do have the opportunity when they retire that they can give back. I think that's great and admirable. And that experience, I think, also benefits a lot more than someone that doesn't have the experience. I think that's great. But this is the last question for the day of this episode, and I promise is, when you started, was there this gap or this missing piece? I mean, I know that we're in a stage where we've got 5 different generations potentially in the workforce, and the people that are leaving at the most rapid rate now are the baby boomers, and they're called baby boomers because there were more people born in that generation than ever before. And then the Gen Xers, which is me, is the least number of births in any single generation. And then it's the millennials, the Gen Zs, and so what I think we're in a very unique place, but I don't know. I think we're in a unique place based on generations. Are we in a unique place when it comes to finding facility help? Has there always been a hard time finding facility directors, facility support, and staff? Or is this something relatively new?
I think it's new. I think you hit the nail on the head when you talked about the boomers. I think we all aged out at the same time. And we were the people in our generation that took the job, kept it for 30 years or more, and then moved on. I mean, the millennials, they're known for 2 or 3 years and changing jobs. which is, that's the times are changing.
Mhm.
But I just, there is a gap. There's definitely a gap. And I think I know so many people that have aged out, and so much of the communication that's coming to me for people looking for help it's because their facilities director has retired.
Mhm.
And I've been on 4 search committees for 4 different communities. And I keep coming up with the same 4 applicants, same 4 people putting in.
Wow.
It's like, we've tried Indeed, we've tried local newspaper. We put flyers up in the
Mhm.
sandwich shop, in downtown. We've put it on the website for mass facilities, and to see if anyone has a nephew or someone there's just, we put we use the bulletin board at Wentworth, the bulletin board at Mass Maritime. And there's not a lot of people coming out of school that want to get into it. Mass Maritime has a great master's program for facilities directors. But I just don't know if it's the public work, if the pay's not there, maybe, and they can get more money going
Yeah.
someplace else. But there is definitely a gap, no
Yeah.
question about it. And right now, I'm one of many that are trying to fill those gaps with as much as we can.
Yeah. I think you're right. I've been lecturing at the Wentworth Institute of Technology Master's Program for the last 7 or 8 years. And I can remember going back to the first time I did it. I think there was a graduating class of like 25, and 3 or 4 went into schools, which was good. That's pretty good. And the last 2 that I went into, there were none, and they were going into big pharma. They were going to Fenway Park. They were going to large industrial facilities and things of that nature. I think that you're right. I think we need to work on a new to the world of public education facilities, or education facilities facility director, for them to give us some insight and learning on this. But I think that I think we've got some work to do to figure out how to get people more engaged. And we don't have a sponsor yet. So all the companies that I mentioned are unpaid plugs of experience and knowledge. But when you're talking about that, I'm just bringing my brain, and there's this company called Blue Recruit that I'm going to have to hook you up with. Matt Smith, who I think you've probably met, friend of mine. He and a couple of his friends started this company, Blue Recruit, which is a job search platform that's solely for blue collar workers, and it's pretty slick. So we'll have to check that out. We might have to have them on the podcast at some point, because I keep hearing opportunities of how do we find these people, because they're out there.
Yeah. And I think one of the changes and one of the problems at this stage is 30, 40 years ago, a facilities manager did, this much. I've got a slide that shows the normal
couple handfuls.
Facilities manager. Yeah. And now so much has been added to it. I mean, back in the day, we called it the Heartbeat Award. The custodians whose heart was beating the longest got the job.
Right.
He became the top mop, they called it.
Right.
So he was the facilities director. And that filled those positions. People moved up from the ranks and filled those positions. But now that job has just been inundated with technology and rules and regulations and trainings and certifications and everything else that you need to do it, that a lot of those guys, they don't want to make that jump. They don't want to come up to the next step.
Well, I think that goes right back to the first couple of minutes we were talking, when I made the statement of, facility staff and custodial staff and even facility leaders are not provided enough professional development and training. And I think that going from the broom pusher to the top mop, that's still possible with the right guidance, leadership, mentorship, and programming through their career, not just through, oh, Paul's been here the longest, let's go ahead and let him sit there, because the longest person's leaving, so let's put the second longest in their place. Right. And that shouldn't just happen. That needs to be not just earned, but it has to be learned. And I think that's a huge gap right there. I mean, I think you and I have a lot of problems with the world to fix in this podcast and some other things. But
I don't know if we got enough time, but we'll try and take on as much as we can.
Yeah. Well, let's wrap this thing up before I come up with another question. So, hey, appreciate you making the time here today for our episode 3, making up for what was going to be our solo episode too. Working on some guests for next week. So stay tuned. You and I will chat about what we want to do next, but enjoy your time up there. Stay safe and off the ice. I'm sure this is one of those days that you're outside looking and going, hey, I'm glad I'm not in an office today.
Nice to be able to watch it fall and freeze and not have to worry about dealing with it.
Well, I don't know how the hell you do it. I mean, it was pouring rain down here, and now we've got 1.5 inches of ice. It's gonna be a deep freeze. It's gonna be tough stuff, and I feel bad for our friends down in Texas. I was just talking to some of them in the Dallas area, and they're getting ice and snow, and when they get it down there, they're shut down until it melts.
Yeah,
and it's been cold for a good couple of days. But we will see you next week. Let's keep the same time locked down. This works good. Maybe we can have you every week. Awesome. Well, right. That'll do it for this episode of the Be Awesome at FM podcast. You got to learn a little bit more about Paul, his life, and then just the life of a facility director in general, and then a little bit about the life of the people that try to do business with him and support him. Most important advice I'd give to anybody that's looking to do business with folks in the facility profession, as Paul said, is understand their habits, understand the times, ask questions. The way I found out the best time to call Paul was I asked his admin, when's the best time to call Paul? Because I get up early, I don't sleep much. I could call at 4:00 in the morning. The earliest on-site meeting I've ever had was at 3:15 a.m. Carsey Denning and I drove up to New Hampshire, and that was because it was the best time for that facility director. So the most important thing is to ask questions, to understand the people that you want to get the opportunity to serve. So it's not just a one size fits all. And especially on days like today with the ice, on a day like today, I would be doing my admin work. I would be making sure that I'm playing catch up. I would be dropping emails with a don't need to get back to me. Just wanted to let you know I was thinking of you. I know it's hellacious out. Stay warm, stay dry, stay safe, because that's important. And it has to be genuine and authentic, not just because you're saying it because I told you to. But I hope you're liking this podcast. We're really enjoying it. Like I said earlier, we get 7 5-star ratings, a couple of reviews. And we're really going to push the envelope of getting people to understand more about what it is that it takes to run school education facilities around the country. And I've got some guests from Virginia lined up, New York, Texas, Florida. We've got some executive directors from associations to talk about exactly what my statement was about how we need to provide more professional development. So stay tuned. But in the meantime, we're the only social media platform that we're going to be on is LinkedIn. That's going to be where you're going to see all of our notifications, updates, opportunities. Our podcast can be listened to now, which is exciting. This wasn't last week. We were hardly anywhere. But now we are on Spotify, we're Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts. We're waiting on Pandora. We're on YouTube. So if you want to see the video, our 2 lovely faces talking, you can watch us on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button on all of those. Follow us, like, 5-star reviews, and comments. And again, if you do a 5-star rating and review on our podcast platforms, any of them, we're going to send you a free Be Awesome t-shirt, a coffee mug, a tumbler. You take your choice, because a lot of you already have the t-shirt, completely free of charge for giving us your time. So for those of you in the cold, rain, raw, ice, snow, whatever it is that's bad today, do stay safe, take care of one another. And if you can be anything, be awesome.